Just how long was Jimmy in prison? Will Kevin Bacon keep making those moves? And how is Aldis's court case going? Let's talk about it. This is City on a Hill.
You're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Why, hello, City on a Hill viewers. My two co-hosts could not join me today, so you get a solo City on a Hill endeavor with Coy Jandreau. Spoiler alert, Coy Jandreau. City on a Hill just had episode 4 air, and it was tension-tastic. This is a show that is very powder keg, slow burn friendly, and this is a powder keg of an episode. I really dug this episode because it went a lot of different directions I didn't imagine. The episode was called Wickedness of the Wicked Shall Be Upon Himself, which is actually a quote within the episode, but also a beautiful summation of the episode. I am really digging how many character dynamics we get on this show. I thought we were going to have a completely different flavor of Jimmy being in jail and there being an entire Florida element, but no, Jimmy's already back. He's on the scene. He's back in Boston. I did not expect it to sum up that so quickly. So we're seeing the shell of Kevin Bacon start to form, in that he's this bulldog of a character, and in this episode we see him get jumped right at the top, and it doesn't shake his confidence in a literal and direct sense like another show might have. And I thought that was going to be like, you see him start to shake, you see him start to like judge himself, but no. Kevin Bacon's character in this is quite deliberate in his madness. I'm really enjoying Jackie Rohr. There's a moment in this episode where he's literally strong-arming a priest, and you expect a glimmer of remorse, and it never comes. And at the very end of the episode, I think we see him just begin to show some cracks in his shell. So I think that that's what this episode is about as far as his character, but I love the boldness of his character. We've talked about Jackie every episode. Kevin Bacon, once again, returning to Boston to play a very, very Boston fellow. And in this episode, not only does he strong-arm a priest over dinner, he then bribes him with a giant brick of money publicly, just right there in the, I don't know, I'm not a church guy, whatever those money baskets are called that they give to Jesus. So that was awesome and bold, and I really like his character. I'm curious when we see him start to fall apart. Once again, I think it'll be the next episode. Now, we also have a great thing with his relationship, him and Jenny. I've said it every episode, the women on this show are incredible, and I think it's a beautiful... They show the strength of the women in the show by showing them not backing down from these strong men. I think that's a great testament to showing a good relationship. None of the relationships in the show are good, but showing what it's like to have a worthy mate. If you're going to be in these high-stakes, high-tension environments, you want your partner to be just as strong as you, if not stronger. And I think we're going to see a lot coming out of Jenny Rohr starting now. She's been beaten down throughout the series. She's a very strong woman. She's not taking it. She's not letting him say she's not going back to school. She's not accepting the fact that she's not doing these jobs. She's forging her own way, even with Jackie making these choices, and I'm fascinated by Jenny's character. This episode, we saw her dealing directly with her husband's coercion in the town, and their relationship's fascinating. In fact, this episode to me was the most about the relationships, the couples. We've got Jackie and Jenny, we've got Frankie and Kathy, and of course we've got Siobhan and Decourcy. 3 very different relationships. One of them, corrupt cop and woman trying to tolerate corruptness. Another one, corrupt crook, but a good crook. I feel like Jonathan Tucker's character, Frankie, is definitely a good guy who's done bad things. And Kathy trying to be a good mom while also being like a leader of this little crime syndicate. She's definitely the matriarch of this whole world and knows a lot and is handling it well. We'll get more to that later. And of course, we've got Siobhan and Decourcy, who are the actual just. We've got a pair of lawyers, people in law, and they're the ones having to deal with all the ramifications of being African-American in Boston in the 90s. And this show shies away from none of those things. One of the things I really liked about this episode is it handles so many problems today head on. The problems we're facing in the world today that should have been solved earlier than the 90s, obviously haven't been, but in the 90s, they were still prevalent, and the show addresses problems that you'll see on the news today in a way that makes it feel like you're not being educated or heavy-handedly like this is a lesson. In this episode alone, they deal with racism, sexism, mental health, gun violence, and it's all in storytelling, so it doesn't feel like you're in school. The show has done a beautiful job, in my opinion, of balancing 90s racism in Boston with problems we're facing today and how they should have been solved and how they can be solved. All the characters are intelligent in the way they're handling themselves, especially Decourcy. He's a brilliant lawyer, and he's doing what he can with all the odds stacked against him. And Siobhan, the same. Neither of them want to be in the position they're in, but they're handling it. They're outthinking other characters. I'm really curious how Decourcy ends up landing his long-term goal while obviously being controlled and corrupted by Kevin Bacon's character, because they both got long games going. They're both trying to play chess while the others, they think, playing checkers. They're both thinking outside the box. And then also sexism. This show is very clear in that, hey, this woman's at home, the men are working, and the women are like, no, screw that. That's not real life. And I love that they're handling that head on once again. The women in the show are powerhouses, and that is Boston women. Like, Boston women, I love how they're handled in this show. We also have the issues of mental health. This is the first episode where it's been a major through line. The daughter of Jonathan Tucker and his wife's character, sorry, it slipped my mind for a moment. Frankie and Kathy Ryan. Frankie and Kathy Ryan are my favorite couple in the show. Kathy is this badass, kind of like Skylar in the later seasons of Breaking Bad. She's in on the world of what the drugs and everything going on, and she's the one that's handling it as best she can while taking a step back and looking at it. She's thinking long game, just like her husband, and she's making big moves. At the end of the episode, she actually goes to like grease one of the wives by being like, we're gonna put some money in her hand, everything's gonna be just fine, we'll handle it. And I love that they're playing a very realistic long game in the drug culture. It's a great move. And Frankie continues to be this fantastic character that's trying to keep Jimmy off the streets, keep Jimmy from being dumb. He's keeping his group of criminals as smart as he can. He's handling them as best he can. And of course, balancing all this while trying to keep a public front of being a guy that just works at a grocery store. That character dynamic is fascinating. And if you come from any city, people that, do crime, they need to balance their public persona and their private persona. And I think the show does a really good job of showing through a cop, a lawyer, and a criminal how many multiple personalities you kind of have to have. Your public persona, your private persona, your work persona. There's a lot going on. And these are 3 sets of couples, once again, that are all balancing these different sides, all authentically Boston, all very 90s. So the mental health issue that gets brought up here is their daughter, Frankie and Kathy Ryan's daughter, was assaulted in the last episode of The Hockey Stick, and she's also been having nightmares because she's dealing with a crime house. She's dealing with her parents doing awful things, and she's having issues in school because of it. She's falling asleep. She's having nightmares. She told her teacher, and her mom is actively against her getting mental help from a psychotherapist, from someone at school. And her dad's like, no, she probably could use it. We put her in a horrible position. So I'm really digging that they're handling mental health head on. I think mental health's really important. I think America's got a weird thing about basically, if you've got a physical ailment, you're fine. But if it's mental, toughen up. If you lose a lot of blood, you can see it, so it's fine. But if you've been depressed, you just need to go look at a rainbow or something. Like, people don't treat mental health as much as they treat physical health in this country. And I like that this show set in the 90s is like, we should have fixed this a while ago. Mental health's important. Whatever you're doing to make yourself happier and work on your mental health, good on you. It's important. So I love that they're using that as an outlet for this character, and it develops all 3 of them more by the way they handle each other. So I think that's a fascinating dynamic. Once again, these are the characters I can't wait to find out what happens with Jimmy, how Frankie keeps handling it, when that little corner powder keg's gonna go. I'm gonna use powder keg a lot in this episode because that's what I feel like this episode was. Episode 4, powder keg. It's all being filled with powder. So then it brings us to Jackie and Jenny. Their relationship has been strained from the very beginning. This episode for them was about Jackie strong-arming Jenny in every possible way. She just wants to go to school, she wants to volunteer, and Jackie wants to control her. So as much as he's controlling the police and as much as he's controlling crime, he's controlling his house as well. So he goes around and undermines her in every corner, but she keeps standing up for herself. She keeps finding a way, and she's had flirtations with the young priest. She's trying to be her own person, and it's a beautiful arc to see her out-manipulate Kevin Bacon's character. And once again, I don't know how Kevin Bacon's character maintains this almost likability. It's a testament to Kevin Bacon himself He's doing the most unlikable things, and yet we're all still here, and we're kind of wondering how we're still watching him and how we're still liking him, and he's just been the worst from the beginning, but something in the innate Kevin Bacon charm has kept us here. So that relationship continues to astound. The mother-in-law, great supporting character. Their daughter, I can't wait to see get some more screen time. We've seen her a couple times, and she's always this great button to a scene. Their relationship is fantastic. And then finally, Decourcy and Siobhan. They are a pair of lawyers, very well-spoken, very intelligent, they think ahead. A lot of these characters have plans, but these ones actually think ahead. Decourcy and Siobhan, we see Decourcy in a courtroom scene where he's not winning. Last episode we saw a great, like, a few good men scene where he's doing his thing. This episode we see basically the jury of your peers is going to turn against the out-of-town cop and side with the local guy, and that's what happens. We see him start to lose track of the case until the guy, Sheehan, loses his shit and just attacks Decourcy, and then the tables have turned, and that finally puts things in his side. But we see Decourcy under pressure. We see him not able to handle stuff. And then on Siobhan's side, she's investigating another case entirely, wherein she hears about the priest making some horrible choices and saying some things and inappropriate goals 4 years ago, and starts to unravel that case. And I'm sure as the show develops, we'll see more and hear more about this priest. There's a lot going on Siobhan, and that character is... I think these two have maintained this great scene-stealing ability that they're always so authentic to their character that when they pop up, you want to know more, and they haven't gotten enough time to dive into them yet. So I see them developing as we go along. And I also think that this was an episode where we're going to see something huge break in episode 5, because the next episode is called something about injustice comes to justice. So I think something happens with Jimmy, something happens with the court case where it starts to unravel, and it's going to be crazy when we find out. But this is a Boston show, and we've talked about, like, basically the plot of the episode. There's a lot going on in this show, and this is probably the most plot-driven episode so far, and not world-building. The world-building in episodes 1 through 3 for me was like the Wachusett commercial, and moments of absolute, like, this is setting the tone. I feel like the tone is now set. This is a setting we all believe in. We're fully versed in it, so now we're getting into the juice of it, all the plot and all the characters. But I think the Boston moment for me was... basically the entire element of mental health, where she smacks her kid, where Kathy Ryan smacks her kid around and then she tries to justify it. That to me speaks to generational, take care of your own. Like, a lot of city perspective is, if it happens in this house, it stays in this house, we handle our own. I feel like there's something to that, like, survive a New England winter of everything that passes through this house we handle within house. And there's something, I mean, I've heard that conversation 100 times. So that was my Boston moment for the week. And I think we have a cliche Boston sound effect. There it is. There's the Boston moment. That sound, that, like, 2 strums of guitar is everyone that's either from Boston or a tourist to Boston thinks that that's what Boston sounds like. So,
dude, can I jump in real quick?
Oh, please.
Oh, this is Jonathan.
I've been ranting for 10 minutes.
Like, Dropkick Murphys was one of my favorite bands, and I'm from the South. Like, this song is so epic.
Dude, when Boston won the World Series, the clean sweep, they toured with the Red Sox and brought brooms, and they were sweeping around Boston.
That's awesome.
So they did a mobile tour. The Dropkick Murphys literally toured Boston with brooms for the clean sweep.
They're the shit.
It's some magic. Have you been to Boston?
I have not. I want to go so much.
Okay, if you ever make it, I'll give you a full, like, plot by plot where to go and, like, the different things.
That'd be awesome.
It's a very good city.
Right on.
So Boston moment for the week was it's a deep one. It is not dealing with mental health appropriately. It's a very Boston thing to do. Sorry to the people of Boston. I am from within you, but I think it is a institutional problem. Also, this episode shows the different types of mentality around Boston. Kevin and I spoke last week. He's of the I'm proud to be from there. I look at it from over here, whereas I am proud to be from there and I go as much as possible and I try to get back into the riches of it. Kevin Bacon's character is consistently talking about how he misses the old days, how he misses when you knew what crime was and that people did bad things, they knew they were bad. And I think this episode really establishes Jimmy as just an absolute madman. I do not, like, no one can trust him. You wonder if he's going to betray his brother at any minute. The conversation between Jimmy and Frankie, he's clearly trying to get anything incriminating out of his brother at any moment, and that is just awful. Like, Jimmy has finally snapped. Him going to prison in Florida really finally broke him, and I do not give it long until he betrays Frankie and the rest of the group in some way, and him knowing where that money is behind the mirror is a dangerous thing. I'm gonna look at some notes I took during the episode, since I'd usually take this time when someone else was talking to look at my notes. Pardon me, internet. So we talked about the undermining of Kevin Bacon's confidence directly with the assault that happened outside of his car. I think that's going to start to take effect as we go on. This episode actually balanced out a lot of the tensions that I didn't expect to be solved so quickly. It kind of got the court case further along. I thought the court case would be like a 4 or 5 episode arc. It got Jimmy out of prison a lot quicker, so it balanced a lot of those tensions, but it added stuff with the Reverend. It added certain elements with Frankie. It's adding new tensions. So the show's plot, like course correction, is going in totally different ways than I would have expected. It continues to paint clear as day how important Aldis's character is, even though I feel like he doesn't have quite enough screen time yet. I want more of that character and where he's going. Jonathan Tucker's controlled character continues. He's the only one that seems to have his head and his shoulders out of that whole criminal syndicate. They keep building up this young priest and that Kevin Bacon's wife's relationship with him. The young priest, I don't know what to make of him. I feel like the young priest has definitely done some stuff in his past. I think we're going to find out some stuff about the young priest that is unsavory, and we'll see where it goes from there. I definitely don't think that he is all that he seems. Let's see. I love that both Jonathan Tucker and his wife are head of the house. All their relationships are them seeing each other as equals. Even when Frankie Ryan is like, don't hit my kids, it's not seen as I'm telling you what to do. It's like, good God, there are children. And the way Kathy breaks down, it feels so authentic to... She's a good mom, but she's over her head. Like, she's having to take care of a bunch of boys and raise this daughter. She's having to do everything in her life and deal with all this. I love their relationship, but I like that they're both head of the house. They see each other as equals, and no one's trying to strong arm the other. And then... let's see. Bacon's character just going head on at everyone. He's a bulldog. He's shameless. That dinner scene, the brick of money I talked about, just insane. You get great investment in this episode on both sides of all cases. They're slowly making all this dirtier and dirtier. That is something I noticed about this episode. We've got Decourcy getting deeper into Kevin Bacon's side of things. He sees a bribe happen right in front of him. I wouldn't have thought that'd be okay with him in the first episode. We see him actually encouraging these bad choices. We see him getting a little more braggadocious about the way things are done. So I'm curious if we're going to find out Decourcy's not as straight edge as he seems, or if he's playing us, the audience, as much as he's playing Kevin Bacon's character overall. Very curious how that plays out. Even next episode. Next episode's halfway through the season. We also got the scene where we get the greasing of cash at the end, and I think that's going to come into play. I think that big stack of money is going to start getting spent. I think we're going to start to see a lot more crime coming out of the Ryan household, however that takes shape, whatever that means for them. And speaking of which, we've got some real-life Boston news. Let's see here. Boston news I wanted to talk about. All right, first of all, the casino's been open for a week. Most people I know, I've been and loved it. I know some people, I know a guy that has been there 4 days in a row. I'm worried about him. Just don't. It's a slippery slope. But enjoy the casino in Boston, everyone that's there. The Encore Casino, billions of dollars. I cannot believe. I haven't been home in 2 years and I missed an entire casino go up. So I want to check it out next time I'm home. The craziest news of the week for me was a parking lot in Boston. A parking lot sells for $40 million. That's right, a parking lot. It sold, and it's on the corner of Newbury and Dartmouth, which is a very crazy, dense area, and you can't really build out more land in Boston. The coast is already artificial. They just had to extend it out more. So we're running out of space. $40 million. A Chicago investment firm paid that for the nondescript lot, and it's near Back Bay, so it's a high-end shopping district. Very high stakes parking. I cannot imagine what parking is going to cost in Boston because it makes LA look very cheap. We also got the Kevin Spacey local case was dropped out of court. So Kevin Spacey and that guy in Nantucket, that is over, at least on the local level. So I'm curious how that got handled. I don't know a lot of details about it, but it is fascinating because that was a very public case and now it is suddenly out of civil court. We're also shaping up for a good Red Sox season. Celtics are figuring their stuff out. I'm like one of the only 5 people in Boston that didn't dedicate themselves to sports, so apologies to Boston fans. I love the teams. I just don't know enough about them to comment. Let's see. It was a slow news week because the Boston Globe is running a story. Man injured in fall on rocks at Gloucester Quarry. Unfortunate. Be careful out there in those quarries. So yeah, I think that would be this week's summary of we've got some news. We had a great show. I think that 15 minutes of me talking about a show that is an hour is a fairly good summation of the show. Apologies for my co-host not being able to make it. I would love to have a banter about how they felt about the show instead of just one man with you. Live chat, I just turned you on, so I'm sorry if you were in there the whole time. But City on a Hill next week, I think we're going to get some things breaking. Oh, I hear sounds. Yes, power. I think next week we're going to have a big thing in the case break. I think we're going to see Kevin Bacon start to lose his cool. I think his braggadociousness is going to be his downfall. And I think we start to see the Ryans take control in a bigger way. So those are my predictions for next week. I'm very excited. The show is fantastic. I cannot wait for more. Until next week, City on a Hill. We'll see you then.
Our founder, Kevin Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.